Something big happened in Wisconsin today. The progressives took over the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, which is extremely important. I want you to listen to what Rachel Maddow had to say, and then we'll take it on the other side. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side.
Results in the very important Wisconsin Supreme Court election tonight. Janet Protasiewicz is the more liberal of the two candidates. Dan Kelly, the more conservative of the two candidates. This is considered broadly to be the most important election in the country, the most consequential election in the country in the year 2023. As you see with these elections here, the projected winner is Janet Protasiewicz, the more liberal of the two judicial candidates here. This has very big consequences for Wisconsin and indeed for the country. I will just point out a couple of things here. This may very well mean that there is a deciding vote in the Wisconsin Supreme Court that results in abortion being legal in Wisconsin instead of illegal. It also means that Wisconsin, which is arguably the most gerrymandered state in the country, may finally get what are considered to be fair maps rather than radical Republican maps. I will also say that the Wisconsin Supreme Court is the one Supreme Court in the nation that agreed to hear Donald Trump's challenges to the 2020 election, and it was only by one vote that they refused his demand to throw out hundreds of thousands of votes in Democratic cities in Wisconsin, thereby giving him that state's election result when he had not, in fact, won it. And now the majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, for the first time in more than a decade, will flip from hard right conservative control to progressive control. That is a huge deal.
Let me tell you why this is important, folks. Wisconsin is one of those states that are pretty much close to 50-50 with a bias towards Democrats. In other words, they've elected, if you take a look at who they elected in 2022 and even before, we have a governor who is Democrat. He was elected 51% to 47% or so. We also had the Secretary of State who was elected 48%. Again, pretty tied in the vote. We also had the Attorney General who was 50.7% by 49.3%. So the state is pretty even. The Senate candidate did not win. Johnson still inched out by a point on Barnes. So it's a pretty even state. But when you look at what occurs when we look at the districts that were drawn for the congressional candidates, they send, and let me bring that up here, they send to Congress just 2 Democrats, and I believe it is 7 Republicans or something to that effect. It's ridiculous. It should really be pretty close to 50-50, the amount that they send to Congress. But they get a vast majority with gerrymandering for the Republicans. Now, how is that mitigated? That they took the maps to the Supreme Court, and because they had a right-wing Supreme Court, the Supreme Court allowed them to use these severely illegal, gerrymandered, unconstitutional maps. Well, you know what? With this election, this is where we talk about election matters. With this election, that is no longer the case. As it turns out now, this is it. Actually, they had 8 congressional votes, and it turns out that 2 of the 8 were Democrats, 6 Republicans. It's a shame that so many people get misrepresented, and don't let that map fool you right there, because in the red areas, nobody lived there. Most of the population in Wisconsin, you'll find in Madison, you'll find in Milwaukee, you'll find in Green Bay has a substantial population, and Kenosha and a few other places. But again, what we're looking at now is the repair of democracy. And you know what should be scary for Republicans? The race was not even close. This election is not only important for Wisconsin, this election is important for the entire country, because if we get the amount of congressional seats out of Wisconsin that we need, in other words, seats that are not gerrymandered out of Democratic control, it is much easier for Democrats to control the House again in 2024 not just control the whole House by 1 or 2 votes, but if we get this results in Wisconsin, if we get the North Carolina maps taken care of, if we get the Ohio maps taken care of, it means that in Congress, we will have the appropriate Democratic majority that should be there based on the values of the people in the United States. Abortion, guns, and progressive values win big, even in states that are not big democratic states, because progressive values are what most Americans want. Remember that. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.